Hey guys, I'm Rav, and I'm here to tell you how to play Coah. We will start off by telling you about the ceratopsian itself. Coahuilaceratops, or Coah, is a medium-sized omnivore, yes, it also eats meat, that has the AU rating of a hippo and hits like a wild bull on steroids. This beast is also, as of this video, my personal favorite dino to play on the land side of the game. Another thing before we start this video, I do want to point out that this video probably won't affect many veterans. This is mostly for new players. So if you're looking for a more in-depth guide, you're probably going to have to go to someone else. Coah has two attacks. One being a normal headbutt that does pretty normal damage, but can also bleed, meaning that Coah can extend fights if it needs to, and also force attackers to be much more careful with how they trade with Coah. The other attack is called Stomp, which does heavy damage and a lot of bleed. This attack, unlike other Stomp, also does knockback, making it so that you cannot face tank Coah, and combined with its passive ability, makes it quite the force to be reckoned with. If you want to go into turn wall Stomp, which is a 1.0 talent in the speed tree, you can do even more knockback, and with Earthbreaker, you can stomp even faster. Coah's other two abilities that are passive are Protective Frill, which gives its head a natural damage reduction, meaning you can pretty much zug anything you want, whether it be a Rex or a Pado, or you can keep yourself by a rock so that predators are forced to face you. The other is an Intimidation buff that makes it very hard to intimidate, and as it gets lower in Intim, it starts to intim other creatures just as hard as well. The exact value being a +2 essentially in the talent point. Now that you know a bit more about Coah, let's talk about how this bad boy plays. Coah is designed to prevent things from face tanking it, as its stomp attack knocks creatures away, and in its radius, anything big enough to not get launched has to face its damage reduction. This means you are free to charge in and stomp people without having to care much about safety, and this can make Coah an offensive and defensive monster compared to the rest of the roster. The stomp itself also has a very forgiving radius, so even creatures behind you can get stomped if they are too close. Now I'm going to run you through some matchups for Coah. We'll start out with Rex. Rex is a pretty even matchup overall. Rex cannot face tank you and cannot really tank your stomps without Stoic. This being said, if the Rex builds Stamina Bite and gets behind you, you will probably lose as stomps are a lot of your initial damage. I recommend having your back to a rock or trying to stay in a bottleneck, since this will force the Rexes to face you and make use of your frill passive. This being said, any Rex without Stoic or Stamina Bite will most likely avoid you, as they will end up being launched, so don't waste too much stamina trying to catch them, because otherwise you'll use the stamina you need to stomp. Next up is Acro. Acro is a pretty hard matchup for Coah. Acro is faster than Coah and can roar you so that it not only takes less damage, but also takes away your precious stamina. While you both do reduce damage on tail hits due to a lack of bruiser talents, Acro does have a better turn and has access to the nimble talent. Much like the Rex matchup, I recommend finding a wall or cave to stay in when fighting Acros and to keep track of the bleed you are outputting. I would also try and find some type of hill or maybe a really deep drop to try and launch them off, because Acro can't defend through knockback without Stoic. Chania. Coah's hardest matchup in my opinion. Psy is pretty much the don't bother creature for Coah. Psy deals a lot of injury to you, can do stamina damage, and is immune to knockback while using your spiky shield, plus is immune to your frill passive, making it pretty much your direct counter. I would personally just stay away from them, and when they aren't paying attention, try to knock them off a cliff or try to intim them with your passive ability if they are solo and you have friends. That being said, Psy is extremely slow, even slower than Coah, so in reality, you probably won't be facing them unless you are the one engaging. So if you do die, this is your fault. Megaraptor / Megalo. These guys are both going together, as they are both pretty much the same thing. These guys can capitalize on their much better speed and turn rate to kill you, and having terrain or another Coah behind you will help immensely with this matchup, as they are both quite fragile compared to you, and getting hit with either of your attacks will force them to have to heal because of the bleed. Also, don't forget that you can turn in place to help stand your ground and turn a circle, and in a pinch you can even hit each other for tail hits to get them off each other's back. Personally with me, I like going in caves when I face these guys, as even if you're out in the open, trying to get to a wall, they'll sometimes get behind you. But as I said previously, your stomp is pretty forgiving, so don't worry too much about it. Finally, the last real matchup that you'll have is a Pado. This matchup, despite what some people may say on the official Discord, is not in your favor, but not so bad that you can't not interact with a Pado. While your frill does work on them, this won't help when you're crippled and can barely move to a safe location. Pado does not take injury damage, and you can 100% count on them tanking your stomps, so trying to go toe-to-toe with them will only end up in you getting clowned for listening to some of the advice given by players who only play like old Pado. This is not even factoring in that Apado has access to Oris, Paras, and Lurdus as the time of this video, so even if it is a solo Apado, it may not necessarily be totally alone. My advice is to try and take down one as fast as possible that is not on a hill, since New Apollo does a lot of knockback to Coah, and you will need to try and avoid getting injury from the kicks. You should be avoiding injury at all costs and getting fat at all costs if possible, as if you are slightly injured or fat, Apollo can catch you because your speeds are so similar. All in all, pick your fights wisely with Apollo. The last creature we're going to be going over today is Moza. Do not try and pick fights with Moza. You don't weigh very much and can be easily picked up and drowned. Coah also has a pretty small breath bar and low swim speed, so try and only stay on land or shallow water so you can stomp them if possible. This more or less applies to the other aquatics as well, because in general, Coah is pretty weak in the water. So even if you try the aqua builds, you should expect to lose. Now I'm going to show you some builds that you can do to be successful in your fights. For Coah, the most popular build at the moment is Speed Combat, and this is typically to get turn wall stomp and speed to make its stomp even more dangerous while also making it possible to catch up to things it hits and do a solid amount of damage to by dipping into sharp horns and damage. This build also allows Coah to stomp more because of the stamina and AP that it'll be going into anyways on the way down to the more important talents. And between the three options that you can choose from in the meta right now is definitely the most versatile of the three. You will definitely want to be on a hill for this one, as the knockback will do a lot more damage if you're on a slope. And because you'll more than likely have sure-footed, you should be really potent down hills, making this the best Coah build at the moment. The second build is Combat Survival. Combat Survival is definitely for the more territorial Coahs. This build is really good at defending areas like caves, though you are very slow and do not have turn wall stomp. This build does dish out a lot of damage while still being very tanky, so if you're anything but Psy, you may want to just walk away from this most of the time, unless you're an Acro or a very skilled Rex player that can burst them down fast. This is also a really good build to go fat Coah, because you have more HP, and because you're probably going to go into Thick-Eyed anyways, which stacks with your Frill, they'll do a lot less damage. That being said, you do lose out on stamina, which means you won't be stomping as much. You also will not be very fast, so if you need to run away or catch up to something, you probably won't be catching them. This build is also extremely weak to things that build Exhausting Bite, so be very wary of Speed Rexes or Speed Acros, or Power Acros with Intimidation RAR. The last build is Survival Speed or vice versa. This build is last on the list, as I personally have not seen many Coahs go this route and live super long. This is mostly due to the lack of damage and extra bleed that you could go with the other builds, while also losing out on the extra AP for stomps. That being said, the whole point of this build is to be as tanky as possible while still abusing the turn wall style knockback to do extra damage with your speed. All in all, if you're trying to do this build, I would personally just go Speed Combat as it's better overall, but if you're trying to play safe, this is not so bad. This build in particular is very good at hit and run tactics, so if you're trying to hunt Psy, this probably will be the one you're going to do it as. This build is also better at defending against the smaller creatures because you'll be tankier, but still have some pretty good damage output. Just be aware of the other apexes, and this build is pretty solid. Now to wrap it up for you guys, I'm going to tell you guys some life strategies and some things to keep in mind when playing Coah. Coah has many similarities that other apex creatures have, like high bleed, high damage, pretty good injury, a very good health pool, and most importantly, its other passive abilities, its +2 natural intim, and the free damage reduction. Despite all of this, it has two pretty big glaring weaknesses that really set it apart from the other creatures. The first one being not being able to adjust your turn speed with nimble-footed, though you do get your turn in place, and the other being needing stamina to stomp. While you are pretty good solo compared to other creatures, things like Megs and Combat Speed Rexes are very dangerous to you in packs, as they can very easily get behind you. Make sure to have at least one other Coah to watch your back, or keep yourself near favorable terrain to avoid things getting behind you. Hanging around in caves and by mountains seems to work the best for me in terms of terrain, as nothing other than size are really a threat, and it also removes the trading strat that most creatures can do, as they are forced into a bottleneck to fight you, meaning they have to stand in front of you. You can also stay by a rock or a wall with a friend or two, and wait for your would-be killers to starve out before you do, as you are an omnivore and don't rely on one food source. Well, that's all I really have for today, guys. If anything, go play in a DM server to truly learn how to play and expand your skills as far as you think you will need. Do you think I missed anything in the video? Feel free to leave a comment for others in the comments, and I hope this video helps you and others to come. Have a nice day.